5 simple habits that reprogram your brain before bed. This is the real reason you wake up. If you wake up at night and suddenly feel fully alert, especially around 3 a.m., this is important to hear. Sleep science explains this may not be insomnia at all. It may feel confusing, frustrating, and even scary. Your brain seems awake while your body is exhausted. You wonder why this keeps happening night after night, and most people are never told the real reason. What's happening is often a sign of an overactive brain, not a weak mind, not poor discipline, not something you caused. Studies show the brain can shift into alert mode at night. This happens when internal sleep signals lose balance. The nervous system becomes more sensitive during sleep. Hormones that should keep you resting become unstable, and the brain reacts to a hidden signal of danger. Millions of people experience this at every age, young adults, parents, professionals, and seniors alike. It often starts quietly, then becomes a repeated pattern. Waking up at night becomes normal, even though it shouldn't be. Most people blame stress, aging, or bad habits, but sleep science points to something deeper happening inside. And understanding this is the first step forward, because next we need to talk about who I am and why this matters. I'm Dr. Sarah, a sleep medicine specialist with a background in psychiatry. For years, I've studied how the brain transitions into sleep, and more importantly, why it struggles to remain there. Many people fall asleep without any problem at all, but later something inside the brain changes. The nervous system shifts during the night, and the brain quietly moves into alert mode. Experts in sleep health explain that fragmented sleep is widely misunderstood. Most explanations focus only on habits or surface stress, but sleep is controlled by deep brain systems. These systems regulate safety, rhythm, and recovery. When they lose coordination, sleep becomes unstable. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means the brain is responding to internal signals. Sleep science shows this response is not random. The brain is constantly protecting the body even at night. If it senses imbalance, it adjusts hormones and alertness. Melatonin may rise and fall too quickly. Cortisol may activate earlier than it should. The nervous system remains partially engaged, and the brain prepares you to wake up. What's important to understand is this isn't a failure. It's a protective pattern that develops over time. The brain learns to stay alert during the night, and once learned, it can feel automatic. That's why so many people feel stuck in this cycle. But once we understand why the brain does this, we can begin to see what's really happening inside the body at night. Here's the real reason most people wake up at night. It's not weakness, and it never was. It's not a lack of willpower or mental strength, and it's not because you're doing something wrong. Many people quietly blame themselves for this pattern. They assume they should be able to control it, but sleep does not work that way. Studies show this is a biological response of the brain. The brain's main job is protection, not sleep. Even while you rest, it keeps monitoring your body. When it senses instability, it shifts into alert mode. This can happen without conscious stress or fear. The brain reacts before you even realize it, and waking up becomes part of that response. Sleep science explains that feeling unsafe doesn't mean danger. It often means internal signals are out of sync. Hormones that regulate nighttime rest lose balance. Melatonin may not stay steady long enough. Cortisol may rise earlier than it should. The nervous system remains partially activated, and the brain prepares you to wake up. This is why many people wake up confused and alert. Their body feels tired, but their brain feels awake. Thoughts may start racing for no clear reason. The heart may feel slightly more active. Sleep becomes lighter and more fragile. This isn't insomnia in the traditional sense. It's the brain responding to internal signals. What makes this pattern so frustrating is how invisible it is. Nothing feels wrong during the day. Medical tests often come back normal, so people are told it's just stress or aging. But that explanation rarely brings relief because it doesn't explain what's happening at night, and it doesn't explain why the pattern repeats. Once you see this as a brain-based response, everything shifts. Blame begins to fade away. The problem becomes clearer and less personal. You realize your brain is trying to protect you, even though the signal is misfiring. And that opens the door to understanding what exactly changes inside the body at night. When sleep fragments, the brain doesn't simply wake up. It actually shifts states while the body is still resting. Sleep science explains this is a protective transition. The brain moves from deep rest into light vigilance. That change can happen quietly without awareness. You may feel asleep one moment and alert the next. That shift is not random, it follows a pattern. One of the first changes involves melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that helps maintain sleep. It doesn't just help you fall asleep, it helps you stay asleep through the night. When sleep fragments, melatonin loses stability. Its release becomes uneven and less predictable. That makes sleep lighter and easier to interrupt. At the same time, cortisol begins to change. Cortisol is meant to rise in the early morning. It helps the body wake up naturally. But during fragmented sleep, it rises too early. This sends a subtle wake-up signal to the brain. Not enough to fully start the day, but enough to break deep sleep. The nervous system also plays a key role here. At night, it should shift into calm mode. This is when repair and recovery happen. But when sleep fragments, alert signals remain active. The body stays partially prepared for action. Heart rate, breathing, and awareness slightly increase. The brain stays on watch instead of resting. All of this causes the brain to prepare the body to wake up, not because of danger, but because of imbalance. The brain reads mixed signals from the body. Some say rest, others say be alert. When that happens, the brain chooses safety, and safety means waking up, just in case, even if there's no real threat. This is how the natural circadian rhythm gets disrupted. The internal clock loses its smooth nighttime flow. Body and brain stop working in perfect sync. Sleep becomes shallow and easily interrupted. This pattern can repeat night after night, and over time, the brain begins to expect it, which leads directly to a specific survival response that often activates around 3 a.m. Sleep science has a clear name for this pattern. It's called the 3 a.m. brain survival response. This term helps explain what many people experience, waking up suddenly, often at the same time each night, feeling alert without knowing why, and struggling to fall back asleep afterward. This response is not random or imagined. At night, the brain is never completely off. Its primary role is to keep the body safe. Even during deep sleep, it continues to scan. It monitors breathing, heart rate, and internal balance. When everything feels stable, sleep continues. But when signals feel mixed or unstable, the brain shifts toward alertness. This survival response activates without danger. There may be no noise, no stress, no threat. The room is quiet and the body is resting, yet the brain interprets imbalance as a warning, so it increases awareness and readiness. This is meant to protect, not to harm, but it comes at the cost of deep sleep. Hormones play a key role in this response. Melatonin is no longer steady enough. Cortisol begins to rise ahead of schedule. These shifts tell the brain it may be time to wake. The nervous system becomes more alert, and the brain chooses caution over rest. This is how the 3 a.m. awakening begins. What's important to understand is intention. The brain isn't malfunctioning or broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect the body when signals feel uncertain. This is why blaming yourself never helps, and why forcing sleep rarely works. The issue isn't effort, it's signaling. Once this response repeats enough times, it becomes learned. The brain begins to expect waking up at night. It prepares for it before it even happens. That's why the timing can feel so precise. but learned responses can be softened and reversed when the brain receives clearer signals of safety. And that begins with understanding how the brain decides whether it's safe to stay asleep. Imagine your brain like a night security system. Its job is not to help you sleep. Its job is to protect you while you sleep. When everything feels stable, it stays quiet. No alarms, no lights, no interruptions. The system remains in low power mode, and deep sleep can continue naturally. When the brain feels safe, it trusts the night. Melatonin flows in a steady rhythm. The nervous system stays calm and settled. Cortisol remains low and inactive. The circadian rhythm runs smoothly in the background. The body repairs, restores, and recharges. Sleep feels deeper and more continuous. But when the brain senses imbalance, things change. Not danger, just mixed internal signals. The security system becomes cautious. It turns the lights on just in case. Awareness increases without a clear reason, and suddenly you wake up, alert but confused. This doesn't require stress or anxiety. Many people experience this during calm periods of life. No racing thoughts before bed, no obvious worries during the day. Yet sleep still becomes lighter over time. That's because the brain learned a new pattern, one based on internal timing and signals. Each night this happens, the brain takes notes. It remembers when alertness was activated. It starts preparing earlier the next night. The response becomes more automatic, and waking up feels predictable and repetitive. Not because something is wrong with you, but because the system adapted. This explains why sleep can change slowly over time, even when life feels relatively stable. The brain responds to rhythms, not logic. It reacts to hormones, not intentions. And once the security system stays on too often, the key becomes teaching it when to stand down, which leads to how the brain can be guided back into a sense of safety before sleep even begins. This pattern often leads to light, non-restorative sleep. You may spend enough hours in bed, but the depth of sleep is reduced. The brain never fully disconnects from alert mode, so rest feels incomplete even after a full night. Morning arrives without a sense of renewal, and the body feels heavier than it should. Mental fatigue is another common result, not the kind that comes from hard work, but a dull, lingering tiredness in the mind. Thoughts may feel slower or less organized. Simple decisions take more effort. Focus becomes harder to maintain, and mental clarity fades earlier in the day. Difficulty focusing is closely connected to this. The brain relies on deep sleep to reset. When that reset is interrupted, attention suffers. You may feel present, but not fully sharp. Tasks take longer than usual, motivation feels inconsistent, and mental stamina decreases throughout the day. Many people also feel tired after hours in bed. This is one of the most confusing parts. Time asleep doesn't match how you feel because sleep quality matters more than duration. Fragmented sleep limits true recovery. The brain never fully enters its deepest states, so the body misses key repair cycles. None of this is meant to sound alarming. These are common human experiences. They develop gradually and often go unnoticed. People adjust and push through their days, but over time, this becomes a new baseline. Which raises an important question. If the brain learned this pattern, can it also learn a different one? The good news is simple but powerful. This response is learned by the brain over time, and what the brain learns, it can relearn. Sleep science explains this through neuroplasticity. The brain is constantly adapting to patterns. Day and night, it updates its expectations, and safety is one of the strongest signals it responds to. When the brain learns to wake up at night, it's not making a permanent decision. It's responding to repeated internal cues, hormone timing, nervous system activity, and rhythm. Once those cues change, the brain adjusts again. This flexibility exists at every age, and it doesn't require force or struggle. Studies show the brain responds quickly to the right signals, especially when those signals are consistent at night. Melatonin becomes more stable, cortisol returns to a healthier rhythm, the nervous system begins to settle earlier, and the brain feels less need to stay alert. This creates a foundation for deeper sleep. What matters most is how safety is communicated. The brain doesn't respond to logic or effort. It responds to patterns and repetition. Small, supportive signals matter more than big changes. Gentle cues given at the right time, night after night, without pressure. This is how trust is rebuilt internally. As this happens, the survival response softens. The 3 a.m. brain survival response loses urgency. The brain becomes less reactive during the night. Awakenings may happen less often, and when they do, falling back asleep becomes easier. This isn't about perfection or instant results. It's about gradual recalibration. Hope comes from understanding this process, not from chasing quick fixes. The brain is not your enemy here. It's responding to what it has learned, and learning can always be updated, which leads to an important next step. What signals actually help the brain feel safe before sleep begins? The solution isn't forcing sleep to happen. Trying harder rarely leads to better rest. The brain doesn't respond well to pressure, especially at night when safety matters most. Sleep science explains that effort can backfire because the brain reads tension as alertness, and alertness keeps the system awake. The real approach begins before bed. It focuses on supporting the brain, not controlling it. Creating the right conditions is what matters, conditions that signal calm, rhythm, and safety. This allows melatonin to stabilize naturally, so sleep can deepen and remain steady without being easily interrupted. Calming the nervous system is another key step. At night, it should shift into rest mode. This is when repair and recovery occur. Gentle signals help it disengage from alertness. Breathing, environment, and timing all play a role. When the nervous system settles, the brain feels less need to monitor. Cortisol also needs to be rebalanced. It's not a bad hormone, it's a timing hormone. It should stay low during the night and rise naturally in the morning. When its rhythm is restored, nighttime awakenings often decrease and morning energy improves. All of this helps deactivate the 3 a.m. brain survival response, not by shutting it down, but by reassuring it. The brain no longer senses imbalance, so it stays in sleep mode longer. This happens gradually and naturally, with consistency, not force, and without overwhelming the system. The brain does the work in this process. You don't have to fight it. You simply create the right conditions, night after night, in a supportive way. This approach respects how the brain functions, which is why many people look for tools that can support these signals gently and consistently. Many people choose a natural, doctor-approved sleep support, not because they want a quick fix, but because they want to support the brain at night, something that works with the nervous system, not against it. Sleep science explains this approach feels safer to the brain, and safety is what allows sleep to deepen. This kind of support is not a medication. It doesn't sedate or shut the brain down. It doesn't override natural sleep signals. Instead, it works by reinforcing them, helping melatonin stay more stable, encouraging cortisol to follow its natural rhythm, and supporting a calmer nervous system at night. What makes this approach different is intention. Nothing is forced. The brain remains in control the entire time. The support simply helps the brain feel reassured. When reassurance is present, alert systems quiet down, and the need for nighttime vigilance decreases. This is how the 3 a.m. brain survival response begins to soften. Experts in sleep health explain that consistency matters most. Small, supportive signals repeated every night, not dramatic changes or extreme routines. The brain responds best to gentle patterns, especially when they are predictable and calming. Over time, these signals build trust internally, and trust is what allows deeper sleep to return. This is why many people add a natural sleep support, not as a cure and not as a replacement for healthcare, but as a complementary way to support the brain, one that respects circadian rhythm and biology and fits into a simple nightly routine, without pressure or fear and without forcing an outcome. If you're curious, you'll find more details in the first pinned comment below. Everything is explained clearly and transparently there. What it is, how it's used, and why it works this way. Because understanding matters as much as the support itself. And once you see how these signals fit together, it opens the door to how small nightly habits can reinforce this effect even further.